Is it the ego that distracts, or is it others that distract the ego?
First, there is no ego, but assuming there is an ego, we'd have to say the ego, as a process and machinery of self-limitation, creates separation. It's not about others, it's not about anything else. It's where you are in the matrix and machinery of self-limitation and self-separation, see, of reality. See, in or out of duality, you have to talk about duality then. That determines, where you are in terms of what distraction is and what isn't distraction. If there's a degree of depth of consciousness, then you go beyond phenomena, because you're in a state of being. You have to get to a state of being, to a state of things, a state of being beyond things, and then you're able to make, let's say, proper judgments as to what pertains to others and what pertains to yourself, so to speak. The idea is to get so open and so deep so that what happens is what it is, and it's not about self or other, and it takes care of all of it at the same time.
What level of knowledge is distraction?
Well, we can say distraction is self-entertainment, self-amusement, yeah, to a degree, or information, a certain kind of a quest for information, showing up a certain way, see, looking good. So there's a high degree of vanity implied in a lot of like knowledge-seeking, knowledge-accumulating beings. See. They want to know more than others, simply to look better, to look good, to be authoritative, to have more power. Knowledge is power game. And this sort of thing. See? That's not real knowledge. You have to look into the deeper side of consciousness, reality, so that what you get is real knowledge. We're talking then about having access to intuitive understanding, wisdom, intuitive knowing as such. And then we'd have to say a person who could be considered to have a high degree of intuitive knowing could also be considered someone who is in the flow of the Tao. Then they are consciously and intensely, and yet peacefully, doing without doing, and it gets done. Right? That means there's a selfless basis to accomplishment. Truly. That's our original nature, is selfless. The universe creates not out of self, although we can say self-created, out of selflessness. Everything is created because it's created. It's not because of anybody. Or because of everybody. It's because of nobody it is created. It just is what it is. We have to look deeply into what that is in terms of the mystery of our own being relative to being here in the universe, which is a mystery beyond our being. It's huge, spooky. We have to say it was more like to God and such. But even that is a small word that we use to imply the boogeyman or Santa Claus, depending on where we are in terms of whether it's good or bad. The mystery is neither good nor bad. It's not a Santa Claus or a boogeyman. It may be both, to an extreme degree, or neither. And so it's really a matter of understanding how the mind uses us to spook us, to inhibit us, to deceive us, to derail us, to confuse us, to divide us. As well as you have to take control of it and start to integrate yourself so that, no, there's rather a sense of peace and wholeness and balance. And no interest in others as such, as just part of our search, see, relative to self. So, I want to be aware of what others are doing, have a better sense of what I need to do or who I am. It's self-dividing, self-divisional preoccupation with self-other programs.
So is there such a thing as too much knowledge?
Too much knowledge? Well, too much knowledge is too little knowledge, for one thing. Too little knowledge is too much knowledge. You have to chew on that for a moment.
So, what are the rewards of distraction when it appears to be self-building?
The rewards of distraction when it appears to be when it is self-building, are nil. That is to say, there are effects. I don't want to call them rewards, but there are effects clearly. You're creating something when you're distracted. So you need to know what it is. If it turns out into, well, you've been doing things and becoming more ignorant as a result, then you have to have the intelligence to recognize that whatever it is you're preoccupied with or distracted by, or informing yourself by, is creating more ignorance than you feel it. You don't feel happiness, you don't feel freedom, you don't feel healing, you feel preoccupied where you don't have enough knowledge. So we're talking then about programs that produce more seeking. They sustain more seeking, they reinforce seeking. And in such a case where we're just seeking, that means self-division. Seeker and search for, see, are like two different realities. Or you're searching for something, you don't know what it is, but you say you'll know it when you find it. See, that means you're not accepting what you are, what is already. See, you're not able to abide in it or rest in it or be more a part of what it is, apart from your ideas of what it might be or what your fears are. See? Because these are projections of egotism, let's say, inherited in some cases. See? Discontent, separation. See? And this is just theory at this point. You need to apply it to your self-circumstance, your self-life, your self-trip. You need to apply it to see how much of that is actually the case that indicates for you you're not being peaceful, you're not abiding, you're not okay, you're not centered in a spiritually correct way, where you feel healing instead of preoccupation, distraction with every kind of news thing that comes up, every magazine that comes up. You have to wipe your mind with it. See, you have to take a piece of it. I'm not saying that's bad, but if that's all you have, then you're being used by programs to be anything but a peaceful being, anything but abiding, anything but awakened into the reality of, let's say, the heart itself.
So it would seem if one is seeking as a result of a seeking program, that program has no need to extinguish itself by finding. So therefore you're stuck
it's finding and searching at the same time. See, it's a self-perpetuating program until a shock comes in and you realize there's nothing to know. See? That's like a shock. It's easy to think, well, there's nothing to know, then you go after nothing. So you made nothing another object, another goal of your own. See, a thing in itself. We're saying there's no thing. So no thing means zero. See? Zeroness. Relax into zeroness. Forget about your search. Forget about the self that needs anything. See, out of a cry of incompletion and, let's say, disturbance, reaction to life, insecure, not okay, disturbed, sick, disease, unhappy, suffering.
So do you draw a distinction between information and wisdom?
Wisdom can be informative. Information can be wise. Depends on the intelligence that is doing the perceiving and the processing. In that case, it's always the who. It's not what the thing is. It's not about music. It's who. Who's playing it? What's the meaning? What are they playing? What are they communicating? More of the same razzmatazz? More of the same entertainment sleep music? See? More of the same imitation music? Playing like everybody else or as well as everybody else? Or thinking you're superior to everybody else because you're playing the same thing by your own standards better? See? Which is just mind, division. It's no better at that point. It's no better. That's going to make a big difference. So you can play it flawlessly. Okay, great. You did it without a sweat. Is that good? Is that great because you're not sweating? Sounds robotic to me. No sweat? Who cares? Nothing being created, just playback. So then we have to see who the who is and what's going on. See? Rather than searching for the same kind of, well, what is it for others? Know what it is for you. Okay? Put the light on the individual, the who.
So is there an unknowing process we can free ourselves of all this accumulation of knowledge with?
That's what is generally called practice, and allowing what you know to disappear. Letting it be. Not about letting it go. Being then has to take precedence over just what is going on in your head, in your world of experience as a knower, your image as a knower, as the one who knows. And what it knows is confusion. It knows distraction. And thus it knows avoiding. It knows avoiding the middle way. Avoiding it, resisting it, obstructing it. You know something. When there's nothing to know, ultimately perhaps, there's everything to know, but that's nothing at the same time. It's a paradox. And so, certainly, it is valid to need knowledge and to acquire knowledge and to master knowledge. I think that's really the key. So it's not the knowledge that's the problem, ever. It's not the information that's the problem, it's the who. It's the ego involved in it. And how it uses itself and knowledge and everything else to limit itself, separate itself, rather than move into the heart domain of, let's say, unification, self-surrender, self-sacrificing, like communion into what it is. Reality is something that is actually one. It's a zero, whole thing, total. Why settle for less? Even conceptually, why settle for less?
Just as an observation for myself, I don't feel like I'm accumulating knowledge necessarily through this association, but when I need to know things, when the question arises, I find answers arise that don't seem to come from the accumulation of knowledge.
Well, once you have been saturated with a certain type of knowledge, then that knowledge of itself has some say in what it is, see, relative to your memory. Relative to your own value, then it's who has the knowledge and who uses it, in what way. Again, it goes back to the who. In this case, we're not talking about the what, unless you want to say the what is knowledge. See, so that's like who knows. See, who knows? See, what knows? See, might be higher knowledge than knowing anything else. Who knows?
So then is that a case of things arising as needed as opposed to just...
But things are arising. We're not saying it's needed or unneeded. Say necessary or unnecessary. It's just what arises. You have to get to that place where it is arising in a sense of itself. And before you can get to that place, you have to deal with everything that is obstructing that. You need to know you're being that until you're being what arises. And we don't mean ego forms or mental forms, we mean something transcendent of the usual ordinary phenomena of self-thought, word, mind, body, and world. And once you get to that place where you're able to distinguish what is really arising beyond that programming, then maybe you can align yourself properly with that, open yourself to that, allow that to be the case in your case.
Does a certain need to know equate with service?
Depends on who needs to know what. Because you have many people who say, well, they need to know because they need a degree. They need the job. See? They need the credibility. So they have to know. They need to know because their job warrants it. And maybe that's their service, like writers and journalists. They need to know. People who are, let's say, in the media, they need to know. News people need to know. Magazine people need to know. We're not saying what they need to know is important, but they need to know because they are occupied with that. It's their job, see. And then what there is also as a need to know is nothing. See, when we're talking about our spiritual reality and that survival, surviving as a spiritual person, which means an unmaterialistic person, a pure spirit being, what you need to know is that. See? That spirit of itself is pure. See? The divine is pure, it's light. It's empty, void of form, so to speak, in the beginning. See? It's not what you think. It's where your thoughts come from. It's not what you feel, it's where your feelings come from, out of the void of your, let's say, your own genuine original emptiness, or spiritness, see? Radiance. All of these things are understood, practice. Then it's the need to know that. Yes, you need to know that to the degree where you can align yourself with it, open to it, so that maybe you can realize it and it becomes your reality as an ongoing approach to life, lifestyle, life view, life meditation, life result, and so on.
You use the expression to know beyond knowing. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, there's no knowing it. There it is. There's no knowing it. It's the knowing of no knowing. But we don't mean ignoramus idiot. We mean no knowing in the most profound sense. The no knowing that merges with the being, so that it's being knowing, being knowledge, right? It's the being of knowledge and the knowledge of being, see, which is not necessarily idiot level psychology or methodology. Right? It's transcendent. You have to be able to have some kind of who-ness in you that understands this properly, to use it wisely.
And how do we develop that capacity?
Study with the master, study teachings, however you do it. See? Whatever situation you can find that enables you to recognize yourself as limitation, self-division, self-separation, and throw that in the garbage as quickly as possible, so that your heart, rather than your head, starts to open. As simple as that.
So what role does the intellect play? Is it an obstruction, ultimately?
The intellect is nothing. The intellect is the intellect. The anus is the anus. Nothing wrong with that. It's whose. It's all about whose. To use in what way? So who's to use?
So that would seem to equate with the saying of the mind being a good servant and a poor master.
See, knowledge and wisdom in the service of enlightenment or liberation or creative, let's say, realization, let's say the realization of creative intelligence, and being that is probably knowledge in the service of mankind. See, thus the information that goes along with it, saying that we have the potential, is a service on behalf of mankind. In the, let's say, the hopes or potential of bringing people to a realization that enables them to be more complete unto themselves and become part of the bigger picture of life, heart-wise, mind-wise, body-wise. See, no, this is common sense. It's good to be familiar with it enough to speak about it freely, so that what it is speaks for itself. So I'm not speaking for anything of my own. This is what it is, speaking for itself, in terms of realization, in terms of understanding. It's also peace, speaks for itself. You have to give a voice to peace. And not just use the word, but become its voice. Same with the heart and compassion. You just lip service is nothing to do with the compassion, no. Give it a voice. I mean, own it, say, be it, feel it, let it speak through you. Have the heart to let it speak through you. And so this is put in easy terms, like said like this in phrases, but the actual realization of it is impossible. See, unless you practice transformational, let's say, self-transcending spiritual practice, or something comparable to that. Could be an artistic practice, could be a certain kind of occupational practice that brings you to the same place of transcendence or transparency, where the thing itself is free to do what it has to do in the most benign and, let's say, world-serving manner possible.
How does the role of the prophet, or let's say the prophetic function, interact with this? Is that like first person to know something and then pass it on to others, or?
And what kind of question is that? Which comes first, the chicken or the egg, or the prophet, or?
I'm just trying to understand that, you know, this knowledge.
If you're open, let's get back to basics. If you're practicing and you're open, you receive, what you're open to. Once you've cleared the clutter out, once you've purified yourself, that means tuned in properly to what it is as source, as core, as basic reality. Let's say it's truth. Let's call it truth for the moment. See? And once you're that in tune with it, which I think goes right to you, the musician, once you get to the core of what it is, that speaks for itself. I just said it. Let the heart speak for itself. Let the wisdom speak for itself. Whether somebody judges you as a prophet or out for profit, who cares? Who cares? Why would you care? Why do you care so much? You have to care about you surviving and getting closer, opening more to the spiritual, That's the individual's right, because it's an individual process. It's not a group process. You're born individual to have realization that is unique to you. That's pretty much spiritual law, although that may not be taught in the churches. Because the churches don't know enough, they don't go far enough. They just want you to believe, come what may, just believe. Not know for yourself, just believe. That's not enough. Born in the church, right? I understand that. Church is a stepping stone to the cosmos, stepping stone to the greater reality. It's like neighborhood congregating. It's like, grammar school. So it serves a purpose to open you more to not so much association and affiliation, but open you more to realization beyond affiliation. We don't want affiliation, we want realization. Hard and fast realization, now. Gone. Already accomplished. Anything else is dabbling in delusion relative to time, space, energy, matter worlds, and we've already spent eons sort of meditating on the navel of what that is.
Is the curiosity that looks at the outside world the same as the curiosity that looks at oneself?
Curiosity is curiosity. We can go beyond that and say there's a need to know. Why wait till a tragedy comes up? Where the circumstances pressure you into having serious consideration of what it is to be on the edge of life and death, and what it is to be on the edge of materialism and spiritualism. So whatever it takes, and that's what it should take. And be happy that there is something out there that wakes you up to your mediocrity and your sleep state, zombiness. So that the sooner you get on with the awakening process, you can live that to other peeps and help them to have the confidence to awaken and do what that brings to you. Do that. Be it. Be a part of that. Enabling process. And we're here, all of us, together to awaken to the potential of our cosmic nature and the potential of our transcendent nature. We have individual nature, we want that at the cosmic level. You got to be at the cosmic level in the manner of speaking to get to the transcendent level. There are steps. Say self, more, other, and then beyond. Self, other, and so on and so forth. And you are what it is. Because we are what it is originally, always. But in our culturing, we seem to be forgetting it, negating it, avoiding it at all costs, because our pleasure needs are so much greater, we imagine. Right? The body's pleasure needs, seem to be made more important than the soul's need. Soul pleasure, spiritual pleasure, physical, sensual pleasure. And everybody has a right to it because you're designed to indulge it and enjoy it. But up to what purpose, to what degree, and who needs it beyond the point? That's the question.
So then would you call the awakening process a turning inward process?
I would say it's a turning beyond process. So the inward is relative, the outward is relative. That point's turning beyond, seeing what preoccupies you and going beyond and say, I'm not just this. I'm not beyond that thought and emotion, that idea of doing something. I am beyond that. I'm not just that. See? In other words, you're beyond fancy. You're beyond fantasy. You're really part of a direct purpose, spiritual mission. That means to feel right about what you're doing rather than confused and in doubt about what you're doing. So there's a healing process that is concurrent with this. You feel better as you start to feel the healing, knowing that you're doing the right thing, which is to step up. And not just be self-absorbed to the degree where you're of use to anybody. You're of no use to anybody. See? And so you want to be transforming that into use to everybody, in a sense. Not directly, personally, but doing something of a service that can be felt around the world. If you can get that far, if you can be that free, or if you can reach that platform where the world is a stage for whatever your work is.
Is that a matter of, let's say, hearing or recognizing one's calling in a spiritual sense?
You can say that, but when does that begin? When is it going to happen? See, haven't you already been called? I think everybody's already been called. Everybody's already been called and chosen, but they're not complying with it. Everyone knows better in a manner of speaking, but they choose, it appears, they or their programs choose to do other things with this lifetime. And so they must do it because obviously they're in agreement with it or compelled to do it and to put off or put aside a higher purpose for themselves until crisis arises or circumstances and the percolator of human existence. So reach a pitch where then what's left, because they are without, understanding, is the spiritual adventure, spiritual search. Then they start to not so much seek within, try to understand at all costs what's going on in their life, looking for purpose and meaning. I think that's a step on the path. Also a step of confusion, maybe manifested by confusion, but a critical step nevertheless, because without that chaos, without that confusion, which then serves a sacred purpose, you can't get clear about it. You got to be honest about what your condition is. See, so then you have to know what your condition is in the darkness to be able to allow for light to become part of what this process is. See? So darkness then becomes light. It teaches you, it illumines you, and then light becomes what it is, see? Already existing in the light, being present. So it's presence. Come.
So some of this seems like, let's say, recognizing the passage of time, not waiting for one's deathbed to have a deathbed realization or revelation, and using the time now. Why wait?
It depends on who. So, who is then responsible for what the pressure is to know anything, to learn anything, or to do anything. Not everybody has the intelligence for what it is we're talking about, or the capabilities. A person has to be honest if they say, I'm not ready for that. Of course, they're not testing their capability, but they can say, no, I don't need that, so they pass on it. And they know other people are doing it, so they find pleasure doing other things. Nothing wrong with that, because one thing will lead to the next thing. If they don't get to it this lifetime, they may get to it another lifetime. If there is such a thing as multiple lifetimes, then you will progress. See? But we're not saying you're going to progress because you can progress. Chances are, if you're awakening through experience and suffering, you learn enough to know better, and then that's progression. See? It's not guaranteed because you take a birth in a high station that you're going to make any progress. See? That could be just as much a downfall for anybody else as low birth. High birth, low birth, what's the difference? You, the individual, the who, has to make sense of it and make it work for you. And you find the same garbage happening to people in the highest places as in the lowest places. And so don't be surprised if from the lowest places you see a saint or a master or a humble spirit that is not concerned with materiality at all and is not a religious person. They're just basic heart people, a heart being, a native heart being. And such a person will be a light unto you, right? With no affiliation with anything except understanding the universe, or the Tao, as you want to say, force of life, and having the wisdom to be able to communicate that to you. Say, no, slow down, take it easy. See? And in whom lives the law. That could be anybody. See? And you won't recognize it, but if you hear what they're saying, then you say, whoa, I hear that. It's the person of wisdom, spirit, beyond culture, universal spirit. They may not teach you that in the religions, and that's the downfall of the religions. It doesn't prepare you for meeting let's say, the Buddha, the Buddha, as the next person you meet, or Christ. You got to see Christ in everybody. See what it is as a force of love itself. Cultivate that. You don't have to say, oh, you're part of our club. What club? We're in the universe. We are the universe. What other club is there?